Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe. Is that the light there going to bother you, or do you think?
No, it's fine.
It's okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. So, let me. bring this nice
That
over to-
is that you, Dad?
That's him. That's kind of a cool shot, huh?
Mhm.
Okay. So, let me see if it lets me do it this way. Okay. So, number one thing is you do have Parkinson's. We know that, right? So Parkinson's can sometimes affect your swallowing, and it's not an immediate thing. It can be gradual, you know, as time goes by, because that's the way Parkinson's is. I don't know if this is from Parkinson's right now, or if it's because you had your hip fracture and you're weak right now, or I'm not sure what exactly is causing it, but you definitely were having trouble with the swallowing. And we can see in the images I'll show you just right now that there's some difficulty. So were you having trouble before the hip fracture, or is this something new?
It was, most of them have come since the accident.
Since the accident? But
No, before.
Oh,
Well,
even-
because he's laying down, he's choking easier.
yeah.
But before the accident, he said he had trouble
He
swallowing
was
certain
having
foods.
some trouble, yeah. And I remember that you had said something about it, that feeling like it
Yeah.
stuck. And remember I told you were right about that, because we looked at the pictures, and sure enough, things are definitely, and it's not that they're getting stuck. It's that the muscles aren't moving them down, moving the food down, like. So
Yeah.
they're not getting stuck on anything. It's just your muscles just aren't working for you like they're supposed to. So we're gonna watch if we can get it to work. So there's your swallow, and you should have swallowed, and you did, but do you see all this leftover? It's just sitting there in your throat. And the problem is that once your swallow is done, and before and after the swallow, this is an open hatch right here. This is the way to your airway.
Hmm.
And it's all just right there, which makes me nervous because
Right.
I'm just worried that it could pop the wrong way. And
Then he would aspirate.
that's the aspiration. And what we did see for every single texture consistency that I gave you was penetration. Did you see that like dark line right there? So that penetration is when the food or the drink, they get to your vocal cords. They don't go through, but they just get right there. And that's worrisome, just because this is a very controlled situation, and your normal everyday eating, there's a good chance that a lot of it could go the wrong way, go past the vocal cords and get into
Sure.
your airway. And the concern for that is if you're aspirating, just even the tiniest bit to get into your lungs could turn into an infection and become pneumonia, and that is the worst. I mean, if you can avoid that, we try. We don't want that. So all of this residue, so I gave you about a half teaspoon of the liquid that I gave you in this picture was, I think it was the honey thick. I gave you kind of the thicker one because I was worried that the others would go too fast and pop the wrong way. Well, this one should have been the easier one to swallow, but this one was very tough. And it took you about 6 swallows to swallow that one little half teaspoon, because you could feel it. You knew it was there, and you kept trying to swallow it down, and your muscles just didn't.
So that was the thicker one, the
Yes.
extra thick.
Yeah, the honey thick, right. So later we tried a trial of the nectar thick, which is the second one up, which
Mhm.
is not very thick. It's kind of like those Kern's nectars, kind of like a little less thick than like a smoothie. You know?
Mhm.
And in the hopes that it might like wash some of this away. Where are my? Oh, here we go. So let's try this one. oh, this is the purees. So this is, okay, that's the swallow is done, and all of this is still here. So you're going to keep, in this trial, you are going to keep trying to swallow that down. And it's just little tiny bits of it go down, but the big block of it just can't get it down.
And that's when he's trying to cough it up.
Well, no, here he wasn't, and that's...
No, I mean when he's been getting stuff stuck in his throat.
Oh, exactly, and then you were trying... Yes, yeah, I'm sure that's what's happening. Yeah. So the concern about the penetration, where it's, getting to your vocal cords, is that every time that happened, it was silent. In other words, if it happened to you or I, we would be coughing and choking up a storm. I mean, our eyes would be... You know what that feels like when you drink something and it kind of goes down the wrong pipe? In your case, it was going to your vocal cords, and you didn't cough, you didn't choke, your eyes didn't want nothing. It was like you didn't feel it. You just didn't feel it. So that's concerning because, if you were to have a bite or a sip of something, we'd say, well, did it go the right way? Did it go the wrong way? We don't know. How much of that is left in there? We don't know. Unless we had x-ray vision on you all the time, which we can't. We don't really know what's happening, and it's concerning. Yeah. Not only that, but during this test, I could tell it was making you really uncomfortable because your eyes were watering a little bit towards the end, and you just kept trying to swallow, and it was just really uncomfortable for you. And of course, like you mentioned, the choking and like spitting stuff up at home, it's not a good way for you to get the nutrition that you need, if it's going to be so uncomfortable for you all the time. So long story short, I'm going to show you another clip. Long story short, at this time, I don't think that it's safe for you to be eating by mouth or drinking by mouth. Hi. Yeah. So I think at this time, and this is just my recommendation, you guys can do whatever you want to do, but my recommendation would be to have a feeding tube put in and to do therapy, lots of therapy, work the muscles, and see if we can get them strong again and see if we can get them working for you, because right now they're not doing their job. They're not doing what they're supposed to do to give you a good swallow. So typically it would be therapy, maybe like 4 to 6 weeks of therapy. And there's different ways to do that, skilled nursing facility, or if you go home, you could do a home health. It depends on what the doctor recommends for your discharge once you go. But it would be something like that, having that feeding tube, doing lots of therapy, and then 4 to 6 weeks later, repeating this test, which you can do as an outpatient and just make an appointment and show up.
What kind of therapy do they do for something like that?
So the therapy would be basically just different exercises. So there's exercises you can do with your throat that strengthen. So it's the same way, like, for example, I wouldn't ask you right now to pick up like 100-pound weight. Your arms are just going to be like, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. So that's what's happening with your throat right now. We're asking the muscles to do more than that they can do right now. And unfortunately, we have to eat. We have to get nutrition, so it's kind of a two-edged sword, We want you to eat, but if the eating is going to make it unsafe for you or is going to make you cough or choke or end up with pneumonia, then we're it's defeating the purpose of it, if that makes sense. So we would do that x-ray swallow again, 4 to 6 weeks, see if the muscles are stronger, see if it looks better than this. And at that point, we could say, okay, it's looking stronger, then maybe let's start trying to eat again and see if the muscles can do it. If it looks the same, then we might say, you know what, it's not looking any better. We might have to continue with the feeding tube. Or if at that point you say, you know what, I'm done with all of this. I don't want a feeding tube. Just let me eat my ice cream or eat whatever I want. Then you can make that decision with your family, just with the understanding that it's very risky, So that's kind of the place we're at right now. And having a feeding tube is not fun, of course. It is a surgery, but it is a common one. It's something that is done a lot. And if you know that you have still got a lot of fight in you and you want to do this, and then that would be the way to go. It'll get you the nutrition you need, and it'll be safer than eating by mouth. But if that's something that sounds horrible to you and you don't want to do that and you just want to eat and do whatever you want, then that is an option too. But again, just understanding that it's very risky. Yeah. So
Okay, so we understand it. We had a close friend that aspirated because she wasn't supposed to eat, and she did, and she actually choked and died.
yeah, my grandmother was she had dementia, so she was, and she had just pocketed a little bit of food and nobody noticed, and she went to bed and she ended up choking on that. It's so funny because you wouldn't think that food could hurt you, but sometimes
Right.
it can. It can.
I've known someone choke on a tuna sandwich.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a real thing, so we do have to be very careful, but it's just something to discuss with your family and all of you guys talk about it and see what you want to do. Because I mean, you just had a surgery, so I don't know if you want to do another surgery or what you want to do, but it's just to think about the options, okay? And I already talked to Dr. Zah, so he also understands and knows the results of this test. And so he's going to come in tomorrow to talk to you guys and see what you want to do. And he'll talk about the same things that I talked about, but I figured it'd be good if you could hear it from me. And
Sure. And so in the meantime, between now and tomorrow, then he still doesn't have any type of nourishment at all.
No. Well, the nurse said she was going to talk to Dr. Zah and see if some IV fluids, so you'd be hydrated and you would be good. Honestly,
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
Our bodies can actually be good with no food for a while, which is kind of.
But what about water, though?
No, of course, as long
Yeah.
as you're hydrated is what I meant.
Okay, with the
food,
IV,
solids, yeah. As long as you're hydrated, you can be okay for a little while. And of course, when you're sick, you don't really have a huge appetite either, So just think about it, and I will talk to Sheila, the nurse, again about the IV fluids and see if she was able to talk to Dr. Zah. And there are other alternatives too, but they're all short-term solutions, like an NG tube, is like where they put that tube in your nose and that gives you food, but you can't have that for more than like a week.
Yeah.
And then another option is like TPN or PPN, which is like an IV formula, but that is also just a temporary solution. And I don't feel like a week or two is going to be enough to get you strong enough to where you need to be. I don't know. And then that's the thing. This is just this is what we believe. Maybe a couple weeks from now you might bounce back and just be ready for action.
Well, he's a strong person and he likes his food.
I could, yeah, of course, we all do. So. Anyway,
okay.
Things to think about. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions or?
It makes better sense why they were real adamant about him not having anything today, but it seems cruel that he can't even have a drink of water.
Right.
And he is dehydrating. Or well, I feel he's just getting a little
sure, of course,
combative.
Because it's hard,
because he doesn't understand you.
You haven't had anything to drink, but and it does seem cruel, but it's keeping you safer to not have something to drink. And I know that sounds weird, but that's...
Well, let me ask you, if they do the IV just to keep him hydrated, what about he's got this thirst, and then to do the swabs?
You would do the swabs. So
do they have lemon swabs?
And dip it in water, squeeze most of it out. So it's not like sopping wet.
Yes.
Squeeze it, and then just keep you nice and moist and nice and wet. Yeah. So you can do that as many times a day. You can do that every hour, twice an hour, whatever. If it's bothering you and you want some more, then you just say, can you wet my mouth for me? Yeah, that's something you can always do. Right.
Okay.
So if we stay here tonight, you're going to turn the heat back on?
Hey, you can push those buttons.
Are you
all
cold?
over the place. Do you want me to bring you a warm blanket?
He's got one right here.
I think there's one over
Were you
there.
cold last night? You said you were hot.
We have blankets and a warmer. They come out really toasty. Do you want me to bring you one?
Would you please?
I will. Okay, let me go.
Okay. And what was your name?
I'm Anna.
Anna, and then the doctor is Dr.
Dr. Zah.
Spell that for me.
Z-A-W.
Okay.
I think they,
Z-A-W.
They have a different doctor up there.
Okay.
It's Dr. Zah, and he is really nice, and he'll come and say the same things pretty much.
If we elect, after we talk to all my brothers and sisters, because we're, they're not here, they're out of state.
Sure.
But if we decide whatever Dad wants, but do the feeding tube, then how long the recovery is that? Is it just a simple procedure?
It's pretty common. It is surgery. I mean, they are going to cut a little hole, you know, and do that, but it is very common. They would probably do it Monday or Tuesday, depending on the schedule. Because
So
on the weekends is usually they don't.
sure. So he wouldn't be discharged to go to the skilled nursing home.
Not yet.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
until
would
he.
have to- yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I don't hold me to it, but I feel like it's usually 1 or 2 days after the tube, because once the tube has been inserted, they still have to wait a little while before they actually start. They want to make sure that everything is okay, and then they'll start the feedings,
Gotcha.
and then watch him for 1 or 2, and to see if he's tolerating it okay, if there's any trouble with it.
Can they do that and the physical therapy for his hip in the skilled facility
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
with the feeding tube in?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They'll take them like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's actually, when you look at it, it's kind of a small thing, and they really cover it up.
I've
It's
seen it
just-
before, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know. Yeah.
Big babies.
So, yeah, they can. Mhm.
Okay.
So
So our next steps tonight is that you're gonna,
think about what you want to
But
do.
Sheila's gonna find out from the doctor if they
If
can
you
do the
have
IV.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Okay.
And then your job would be to think about, you know, what you want to do. If you do decide to not do the feeding tube and just to eat, you know, whatever he wants, then the code status would have to change probably. So, because at that point, if we're feeding him and treating him, it's kind of like saying, here, let me shoot you in the arm, and then let me put a Band-Aid and fix it, and let me shoot you again. Because, you know, every time we're feeding him, there's a danger.
Mm-hmm.
So, of him getting pneumonia or something like that. So, if we're giving him antibiotics and then feeding him,
Mhm.
it doesn't
Right.
work, right? So, comfort care measures would say, you know, he can eat whatever he wants, he can do whatever he wants, but we're not going to keep treating so aggressively. We're just going
Right.
to treat for his comfort, you know. So,
That makes sense.
That's palliative care. Yeah.
That's what?
That's palliative care, comfort care
Okay.
means treating for the symptoms that make him uncomfortable. So treating for pain and that kind of stuff. But they wouldn't do things like drawing blood anymore. They wouldn't give him antibiotics anymore. Well, it depends. There's like different levels of what they do. So
Okay. Well,
So
thank you very
anyway.
much. Yeah.
if you talk about it and think about it, and you're interested in the palliative care, which
Mm-hmm.
is, you know, just letting him eat what he wants, it would be a good idea to talk to the palliative care nurse. So there's a nurse, and she just basically can answer questions. And you say, like, what would this look like? Like, how would this work? We would, if we took him home, or what, you know, how would this work? And so then they'll explain and answer all your questions about
Okay.
that, you know. Because maybe some parts of it you might like and some parts you might not. Or
Sure.
whatever. So it's good to have all the information, you know, so.
Okay. Well, thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or anything, just
No,
let your
for me.
nurse know, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay,
guys have a
thank you.
wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now I wish